Chapter 1: The Unexpected Interruption. Alexander Grayson, a self-made billionaire and CEO of Grayson Industries, sat at an exclusive outdoor cafe in New York City. The crisp autumn air carried the rich aroma of espresso and freshly baked pastries. Dressed in an impeccable navy blue suit, he sipped his imported black coffee while glancing over the latest stock reports on his tablet. The soft hum of conversation, the clinking of fine china, and the distant honking of traffic created a familiar city symphony. A waiter approached and placed a luxurious plate of truffle-infused salmon tartare in front of him. He picked up his fork, ready to indulge, when a sudden, piercing voice shattered the serene ambience. "Don't eat that!" The outburst made the entire cafe go silent. Alexander turned, startled, his sharp gaze landing on a scruffy, barefoot boy standing a few feet away. The child, no older than 10, had unkempt blonde hair, dirt-streaked cheeks, and wore a tattered hoodie too large for his small frame. His wide brown eyes were filled with urgency and fear. Patrons murmured, some eyeing the boy with distaste. A security guard began to move toward him, but Alexander raised a hand, halting him. "Why shouldn't I eat it?" he asked, more amused than annoyed. The boy's chest rose and fell as he panted, eyes wide with desperation. "Because it's poisoned." A ripple of disbelief spread through the crowd. Some people laughed, assuming the kid was either delusional or desperate for attention. But Alexander didn't laugh. He narrowed his eyes, studying the boy. There was no mischief in his expression, no sign of deception, only raw, desperate conviction. "Poisoned?" Alexander repeated, placing his fork down. "How do you know?" The boy swallowed hard, glancing at the waiter, then back at Alexander. "Because I saw them put something in it." The billionaire's entire demeanor shifted. Chapter 2: A Race Against Time. Alexander turned his gaze toward the waiter, who had suddenly gone pale. Sweat formed at his temple, and his hands trembled slightly. The billionaire's instincts, honed through years of high-stakes business and dangerous corporate rivalries, flared. He stood abruptly, knocking his chair back. "Call the police," he ordered his security guard. The waiter bolted. Alexander lunged, grabbing him by the arm before he could escape. "Who sent you?" he demanded. I don't know what you're talking about," the waiter stammered, but his eyes darted wildly, looking for an escape. The cafe's manager rushed forward, apologizing profusely, but Alexander wasn't listening. He turned back to the boy. "You said you saw them tamper with my food. Where? When?" The boy pointed toward the alley behind the cafe. A man in a black coat gave him a tiny vial. "He poured it on your food just before bringing it out." Alexander's blood ran cold. He had encountered threats before, but nothing this brazen. He was being hunted. Chapter 3: The Unraveling Truth. Within minutes, police sirens wailed as officers arrived at the scene. The cafe was shut down, and forensic specialists took samples from Alexander's plate. The waiter, after being restrained, cracked under pressure and admitted that he had been paid to poison Alexander's meal. "But why?" Alexander muttered, rubbing his temples. The police captain approached him. "Mr. Grayson, the toxin in your food is rare, an undetectable poison designed to mimic a heart attack. This was an assassination attempt." Alexander clenched his fists. He had competitors, enemies in high places. But someone had gone as far as to try to kill him? His eyes drifted back to the boy. "How did you know what the poison was?" The boy looked down at his hands, ashamed. "Because I used to see my dad use it. He worked for bad people." Alexander's breath hitched. "And where is your father now?" The boy's face darkened. "He was killed when he tried to leave them." Chapter 4: the boy's secret. The police took the boy aside to question him. Alexander, however, wasn't done. He walked over and crouched to the boy's level. "What's your name?" "Liam." "Liam," Alexander said, voice softer now. "You saved my life today. Why did you help me?" Liam hesitated before whispering, "Because I know what it's like to be powerless." Alexander's chest tightened. He saw something in Liam, a resilience born from hardship. "You don't have to live on the streets anymore," Alexander said. "Come with me." Liam's eyes widened. "With you?" Alexander nodded. "I owe you my life. The least I can do is give you a chance at a better one." Tears welled up in Liam's eyes, and for the first time in years, he felt hope. Chapter 5, A Deeper Conspiracy. As Alexander dug deeper into the assassination attempt, he discovered that the people who had tried to kill him weren't just business rivals. They were part of an underground network, a syndicate that had been operating in the shadows for years. And Liam's father had been one of their assassins. Through old contacts and a few well-placed threats, Alexander uncovered that Liam's father had been killed because he tried to leave the organization and protect his son. The syndicate had wanted Liam too, but he had escaped. Which meant they were still looking for him. The realization made Alexander's blood turn cold. He had thought he was protecting Liam, but in reality, the boy had painted a target on both of their backs. And the syndicate wouldn't stop until they had what they wanted. Chapter 6, A Dangerous Encounter. The masked men in the dimly lit corridor didn't move at first, but their presence alone sent an unmistakable message. Alexander and Liam were being watched, hunted, and now, confronted. Alexander instinctively stepped in front of Liam, his mind racing through possible escape routes. He had faced hostile corporate takeovers, sabotage attempts, and ruthless competitors before, but nothing quite like this. "Who are you?" Alexander demanded, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. The tallest of the three masked figures took a slow step forward. "We're here to deliver a message." His voice was low and measured, carrying a quiet menace. "Walk away from this, Mr. Grayson. The boy is not your concern." Liam tensed behind Alexander, his fingers gripping the billionaire's sleeve. Alexander's instincts screamed that this wasn't just a warning. It was a test, to see if he would fold under pressure, to see if he would abandon Liam as so many others had. Alexander squared his shoulders. "That's not going to happen." The man sighed as if disappointed. "Then I suppose we'll have to insist." Before Alexander could react, one of the masked men lunged. Chapter 7, Fight or Flight. Years of boxing lessons and self-defense training kicked in. Alexander dodged the first blow, using his weight to drive his shoulder into the attacker's ribs. The man stumbled, but the second assailant was already moving, swinging a baton straight at Alexander's head. Alexander barely ducked in time, feeling the whoosh of air as the baton passed inches from his skull. His counter-strike landed solidly, sending the man crashing against the elevator wall. Liam, despite his small frame, reacted fast. He kicked the third man's knee from the side, causing him to stumble. The boy wasn't just quick, he knew how to fight. "We have to get out of here," Liam panted. Alexander grabbed Liam's hand and sprinted toward the emergency stairwell. As they reached the door, the masked men recovered and chased after them. Chapter 8, Escaping the Shadows. The stairwell was dark, the air thick with dust. Footsteps thundered behind them, growing closer with each step. Alexander pushed Liam forward. "Go! Don't stop!" Liam ran ahead, his small figure barely visible in the dim lighting. Alexander followed, his muscles burning as he took the stairs 3 at a time. Behind them, the masked men weren't far behind. Then, without warning, a gunshot echoed through the stairwell. Liam yelped and ducked. The bullet struck the metal railing just inches from where his hand had been. The men weren't just here to intimidate, they were willing to kill. They reached the lower floors. Alexander spotted a side exit and burst through it, dragging Liam into a back alley. The cold air hit them like a slap. They didn't stop running until they reached the parking garage where Alexander's security detail was waiting. "Get in," Alexander ordered. Liam climbed into the armored SUV without hesitation. As soon as Alexander got in, the vehicle peeled away from the curb. Chapter 9, A Dangerous Game. Inside the safety of the vehicle, Alexander turned to Liam. "How did you know to fight like that?" Liam hesitated, then looked down at his hands. "My dad taught me." Alexander nodded. "Your father worked for them, didn't he?" Liam swallowed hard. "Yes. He thought he could leave. He thought if we ran far enough, they'd forget about us. But they didn't." Liam shook his head. "They killed him. And they would have killed me too if I hadn't escaped." Alexander exhaled, realizing the weight of what Liam had been carrying alone. This wasn't just a boy on the run, this was a child being hunted by some of the most dangerous people in the world. And now, by saving him, Alexander had painted a target on himself as well. But he wasn't going to back down. "Then we make the first move," Alexander said firmly. Liam looked up, confused. "What do you mean?" Alexander's eyes hardened. "I have resources, Liam. And I don't take kindly to being threatened. If they want a war, we'll give them one." Liam's lips parted in surprise. "You mean, you're not afraid?" Alexander smirked. "Oh, I'm afraid. But fear doesn't stop me, it motivates me." He pulled out his phone and dialed a secure number. When the voice on the other end answered, Alexander's voice was calm and deadly. "I need every piece of intel on the syndicate that tried to kill me. We're taking them down." Chapter 10, Striking first. Over the next few days, Alexander used every resource at his disposal. His best security team was placed on high alert. Private investigators were hired to dig into the syndicate. Within 72 hours, they had names, locations, and weaknesses. One name stood out: Victor Rains, a powerful crime lord operating under the guise of a legitimate businessman. Liam's face darkened when he saw the name. "That's him," he whispered. "He's the one who ordered my dad's death." Alexander stared at the name, his mind calculating his next move. "Then it's time we pay him a visit." Chapter 11, The Showdown. Under the cover of darkness, Alexander's team infiltrated one of Rain's hidden operations. He and Liam watched from a secure vantage point as his security personnel methodically shut down the operation. Then, just as they were about to leave, a shadow moved behind them. Alexander turned just in time to see Victor Rains himself, flanked by two heavily armed men. "I was wondering when you'd come looking," Rains said smoothly, his voice like silk over steel. Alexander didn't flinch. "You tried to kill me. That was your first mistake." Rains smirked. "And saving that boy was yours." Liam stepped forward, fists clenched. "You killed my dad." Rains looked at him with feigned amusement. "And I'll finish what I started." Before he could signal his men, Alexander struck first. A swift, calculated movement disarmed one of Rain's guards, while Liam, using what his father had taught him, knocked down the second. Within moments, Rains was cornered. "You'll never stop us," Rains spat, blood dripping from his lip. Alexander's gaze was ice cold. "We already have." Seconds later, sirens blared as police swarmed the compound. Chapter 12, A New Beginning. With Rains in custody and his syndicate dismantled, Liam was finally free. No more running. No more fear. Alexander looked at the boy beside him. What now? Liam smiled for the first time in years. A new start. Alexander nodded. Then let's build one. As the sun rose over the city skyline, Liam and Alexander walked forward, toward a future neither of them had expected, but one they would face together.